So this panel is Gem in 2014, and the panel is basically to kind of discuss where Gem, how Gem got here, and it's not through synergy. No, I'm just kidding. but it's amazing that in the years since Gem went off the air, there's kind of a little bit of a lull where there wasn't anything. Then the DVDs came out, and it started the ball rolling again. GemCon started in 2005. And from there, it just seems to have snowballed into now we have a Gem motion picture coming out next year. Yeah, the Gem the movie. Yep, live action Gem movie. So we want to discuss a little bit about where the show started and how Gem is being marketed today through the new doll line, Integrity, and through the movie that's coming out. So what elements brought you to the show in the first place, and what do you feel about the new developments? Because I know the movie was a little controversial. Yeah. Some people are excited there's a movie, and some people are just dead set against it because they don't want anything to change about the original show. So I want to open up, I guess, my first question to the audience would be, what elements of Gem do you want preserved? Hello, David. Oh, the next panel. Okay, so the panel next door is it all depends on the shoes I'm in. So if you are into the dolls, and I'm going to put my foot down and tell everyone to go over there if you're into the dolls, because the shoes, it all depends on the shoes I'm wearing. So Lex is hosting that next door. So if anyone's missing that panel, it's in the ballroom right next to us.
Yeah, you can choose. It's like you can choose your own adventure.
Yeah, those are pretty good during the Gem days.
Oh yeah.
Yay.
Lone Wolf was the best of the Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Okay, so back to Gem.
Showtime synergy.
Yeah, Showtime synergy. So what elements of Gem did you love about the original series, and do you see that being represented in the newer Gem products today? And just start off with anything you want to share about Gem.
The technology and all the bright colors and the glamour and glitter as they put it in the theme song. That's what I love about.
I obviously want to see the stingers, but that's not going to happen. So, so that would be awesome. I don't know. I was thinking there might be a sequel. I was talking to the producers, and they said there might be a sequel. Really? They called me to let me know that they were going to do the Gem movie before they announced it. And I was like, if I could say one thing, the one thing I want here is to have the stingers. That's what I said. And they're like, that's the sequel, or that's what they said. That's what they said.
So we have technology. So we have technology, the glamour, glitter, colors, and we have the stingers. So
music. I really hope that they get really good music for the movie.
The music
is along the same lines, as our original.
Yes, the music. Oh, yes, and yes.
And the music brought me to the show, and I think one thing that I don't know if it's a concern, but I would hope for the movie is that if it could be driven by the music. Like Gem wasn't about. I mean, Gem had music, wasn't necessarily about it, but the stories were driven by it, and that was so much fun.
Yeah.
And the way that the plot was so well integrated into, so you had the drama that led into the songs. That was a very good way, a very good segue between the two elements of the show. And yes.
I think it'd be cool to have the Starlight Girls still incorporated into the movie.
So they
were a big part of the show, yeah.
And that brought the heart to it as well. Mm-hmm. It kind of grounded the show, and they have a reason for their success had to be grounded by taking care of these girls. And the idea of sacrificing a little bit of yourself, or sharing a little bit of yourself, if you will, so that there was a ground reason, because the Misfits were a lot about themselves. They didn't care about giving to charity, or they didn't care about the people around them necessarily, but Gem was always about making sure that there was love, and there was love and concern for people.
Charity begins right here.
But here's the thing about Gem. Her compassion in some ways was her downfall why she didn't run a successful business. She was sometimes too compassionate, I thought.
Oh wow, that's a good point. A little cynical, but that's a good point.
When she bailed Roxy out of trouble and Roxy rocks, Gem paid her off.
That's right, yeah, Roxy Rumbles, yeah.
I wanted to be taken.
So Erica had a point.
I want to tell you that I love everything about the show. All the 80s clothes, all the music, all the colors, all the glamour, glitter, and all. I love their terminologies and synergy. But the one thing I like about most is Rio, how hot, sexy he is.
Oh wow! I'm gonna turn as red as Kimber, right?
Well, what about Riot, though?
Yes.
Oh, Riot. Okay, so we have
I'm like, thank you for voicing that, yes. But okay, what I was going to say,
Well, Eric
yes,
Raymond
all
for
of
that.
the men should be hot. I think the point is that all the men should be hot and all the women should be beautiful. It
Even
should be
Eric
like a
Raymond,
soap
should he be
opera.
hot?
Yes, he should be. Every man. That's a man. It should be hot and Gem.
So now-
Everyone, it should be a beautiful cast.
a beautiful
Because
cast. Okay, so we've got
it represents
hotness
the
and Gem.
cartoon.
We have hotness and Gem in
We want hotness.
2014.
We want it to be really popular. We want
But I
it
think
to be
that's actually a good point.
we want it to bring the masses. Like we want it to be popular.
I'm gonna come back to that because I want to touch on that about how much the show in modern times should, because music videos have gotten more progressively sexy, if that's the right word. And so how would that be incorporated? But we're gonna get back to that because we have one in the back.
Yeah, I just hope that they had to do proper casting. I haven't sort of stated on it, but I hope they do pick very chiseled, hot-looking actors for the guys, and the women have to be like supermodel quality because the whole show is just so glamorous. You know, and my biggest fear is they're going to cast like some, you know, it has to be a certain look for sure, and I hope that they actually incorporate some of the original people that were in the show, you know, who did the voices and who wrote the music and everything. You got to have it all put together. I think it wouldn't be the same without the original people that were involved from the very beginning. You know what I mean?
We did. That's
That's a
true.
common opinion.
That's a very good.
And you know, not just the cast and everything, but the creators and everything. I mean, they're the ones who know the heart and soul of what it's all about. And I think if it kind of went into the wrong hands, it just would never be really what it's supposed to be. So I hope they really, really do.
If the Misfits took over.
So that's my hope. And of course, the casting has to be stellar hot.
Yes, stellar hot.
And the fashion. I hope they spend a lot of money on the wardrobes and make it look right, rather than, you know, there's a way to do it so that way it looks really glamorous and great, and hopefully it doesn't look cheap and cheesy. So there's that fine line.
Between updating it but not being true to the original.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I wanted to say that I wanted to be serious, like not serious and serious, but not so tongue-in-cheek where they kind of are making fun of Jen, because I thought that's what made the cartoon work, was that
the seriousness
the
of it.
cartoon, the series was still serious, and it was taking like a drama. And I think if you take that away from Jen, I don't want people making fun of it. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe there's like some in-jokes, that would be cool. But for the most part, I just want it to be seen as something that is like dramatic, like a soap opera.
Like Kimber could be hanging from a cliff and you'd still be worried about what happened after Kimber's grave. You know?
I would love it if it was just a series of in-jokes, if they just threw every little tidbit that nobody but the group here or the hardcore fans might get, but that they make the effort to show some appreciation for the old school by throwing in those little bits. Do whatever you're going to do, but make sure that, you know, we know that we were considered no matter what the overall.
Yes.
Oh, and I think Sylvia had something, and then
Actually, I have one for the audience, one for the whole entire group here in general, and then actually a tangent of yours. He's already doing his homework because the logo M is hanging there. So he is doing something that's digging deep. So we could ask Sam a couple questions, but we don't know how much she can tell us.
yes, someone in our room, in our very presence, has made an appearance in the movie. We don't know how her lips might be sealed. The Misfits might come after her if she reveals too much.
Well, the question for the room is this: by a show of hands, who had their first crush on Rio?
Oh my God! Seriously, my first boyfriend looked like Rio.
Yeah, purple hair.
And he was like 6'4", and the whole, like, you know, that model look, like it was just like your ideal sort of man, even though it was a cartoon.
See, I was Riot though, and that was the other one who was Riot.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I was initially,
I was
for me, I was all about Tech Rat initially. Tech Rat. I was like, come on, Tech Rat, like, you're the Tech Rat. Yes, exactly.
They've kind of got a Riot versus Rio thing happening.
I know, it's like Riot versus
They weren't. They did get into a fist fight one of the.
You could have both.
It is the modern day age.
Nighttime,
She should have both.
But you had a question as well?
Oh, about the the movie, just that, you know, they're including the trans community in it with, you know, Eric Raymond now becoming Erica. So that's really great that, you know.
But yeah, more inclusivity.
Yeah.
And so is that, I don't know if that's confirmed. I don't know if it's confirmed, but that would be, I would say that would be a really cool thing.
I don't know. I've heard that before.
They should do that. That would deviate from the original.
Okay, so we've got in the back.
I come from the Transformers community, and I saw the evolution of how bringing my franchise to the big screen and how that's changed everything. I actually run TFCon, the biggest Transformer convention in Toronto.
Yeah.
Yay, give a round of applause for that.
I'm a big fan of Gem, but I also wanted to see the curiosity of seeing the evolution of what's going to happen when live action. And I'll tell you this, Transformers fell into stagnance 85, 86, much like Gem, the same kind of generation with Sunbound. And it skimmed pop culture, just like Gem, skimmed pop culture, had a little bit of a resurgence in the 90s, and then stagnates again. Now, a lot of people weren't fans of the Michael Bay movies, but the fans recognized that by making it mainstream, not always being friendly to what the fans wanted from Generation 1 of Transformers, you might not get a movie that might be 100% true to the original, but the one good thing that will come of it, which I'll say, is it'll make it mainstream. And mainstream will then bring new fans bring money, money bring new toy lines. Look at the Integrity toy line that came out. That's an adult-based toy line that is higher market for adults who have disposable income. And that will lead, though, to, if it becomes mainstream, children, teenagers who then have disposable income, it'll be retail stuff, it'll expand the line, possibly a new TV show. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but the movie, regardless if you guys will like it or not, as long as it's mainstream enough that it brings the numbers in. Because the Bay movies, hardcore Transformer fans, not a big fan of them, we had 4 of them, they made more money than God, those movies. Despite the fact that they're not that great. But we recognize that they made them just stupid enough that the mainstream audience will get. You want to have every in-joke from Gem possible. We would love every in-joke from Transformers, but then we alienate the bro audience that are there to see Optimus Prime or to remember, hey, remember that girl with the pink hair who used to sing? That's, you gotta kind of find that line there.
And
to be
also,
able to,
I thought the first movie.
well, it was also the first movie, actually, a lot of people realize the first movie, half of it was done by Steven Spielberg. That's why it was so long. Well, the other, yeah. A lot of people don't realize that. So the second, third, and fourth were all Michael Bay at that point. So that's why the importance of Gem, at least the first one, being targeted towards a mainstream audience will lead to an explosion of mainstream success that will then, you guys will be grateful for. We hate those Bay movies, but the success that came from it we cannot deny from a merchandising standpoint, like all the classical stuff that exists now that cater to the old school fans that would not have existed if we didn't have something. Yeah, there always has to be a necessary evil on a marketing level to then make something that's more passionate.
Yeah. That's a very good point about how a big franchise can bring renewed interest in the classic.
And another thing too, like a lot of people want to have everything in the first movie. You can't, because let's put it this way, you want sequels, you gotta pace it. You can't put singers in the first movie.
No, you can't.
You gotta be crazy. You gotta pace it. Introduce the villains, the first one, you're gonna have pizzazz and stuff. Don't introduce.
But they're not.
Oh, there isn't? Oh, wow. Okay, I don't know.
We don't know for sure. There are rumors. Rumors of yeah, we don't know.
If you're talking a trilogy, if you're talking 6 movies, you gotta pace it. You have, how much source material do we have for the original Gem? Not much. 3 seasons?
The 65 episodes, yeah.
So if you want to pace that 3 seasons of material across, let's hope, 3 movies minimum.
The Bible has more in it, though. It just never got to being animated.
And of course, whatever original material will be created, which will influence whatever the new franchise. So keep that in mind too. That's just something I wanted to air out.
Yeah, okay, so I think you were next, and then you.
What I liked in the series was the consistency between the episodes and all the fashion, the little science fiction with synergy with also the music and the also the woman that can take care of themselves.
Yes.
So we ended at the end, yeah, the feminism that was in Gem.
Some of this could be in the movie. I know that big movies like Transformer is more like show. There's not necessarily like very much plot, intricate plot. But it's successful because I think there are lots of bangs and lots of this. So I think Gem movie should be like that also, but with it is better if there is a good plot also. And maybe I'm dreaming, but I would like to have them in nomination for an Oscar for a musical and best song.
Yeah, that'd be great. They could totally put that in a musical.
As I saw in the script, it seems that there will be sequels if the movie is successful, because I think it is like the first episode when you discover synergy. I think the secret they are looking for is synergy.
Right.
So I mean they will just be beginning, unless they start with like the first episode that I'm Jen and I remember that I started like this.
Yeah.
But and maybe Misfit will get a show just at the end.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think that
or it could be the start of the second movie. They're doing some success, but they are a new group that is really want to take their place and something like that. So what I think it is women that stand up from themselves. I think I read something in the internet that Hollywood wants to put more of this in the movies. And also with the new aspect of internet, the social media, and some of this, it would change. And I see with superhero movies that they don't hesitate to change sometimes the character. I even read that Thor will be a girl.
Yeah, I heard that.
Oh yeah, so
a woman instead of a man, just to make some characters. I think it's a move of making more women, responsible women, at the leading roles, instead of just it is the sister of Thor, it is the cousin or something like that. So I think the timing could be good for them to...
Yes.
Especially because it's almost as, with things like feminism, it's almost like as far as we've come, we haven't. So it's important to have, bring back a role model or something that becomes representation of an independent.
And also the technology is getting closer and closer to real holograms.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got them already.
Yeah, like holograms.
If it lasts,
how about
if it
lasers?
too long time, it can be...
If
we can have a hologram of Michael Jackson dancing on an awards show, we can have Jem somehow. It's possible.
Yeah, it makes it make more sense. Yeah.
Except debatably, sometimes the holograms actually were like those Star Trek replicators that you created real substance.
Oh, really? So, but we'll forget that.
3D printing.
Yeah, 3D printing. That's true. And you had a question as well.
I was just going to say earlier, like it was funny, like everyone's going Michael Bay sucks or whatever, but he does the Victoria's Secret commercials, and I think, when you see that, that's the kind of thing I imagine in my mind about Jem and the holograms, like super sexy, really, like, they're in a band, right? Like, rock stars, right? So, I mean, if he did shoot, let's say, the movie, I don't think it would look so bad visually.
It's interesting. I wonder if that's an issue too. Making sure that it keeps the message of independent women, but they can still be sexy. How do you balance that with keeping
even with the glamour and
material?
glitter place? There still are women who are standing for themselves. Even if it was all superficial around with the glitter and all the stardom, and they still have their feet on the ground.
They still have the core, the core that makes them who they are as characters.
Because otherwise it could be just a silly musical. And
Yeah, they can be sexy but still have that bodily agency where it's like, yes, this is my sexuality, but I own it. Where it's got that feminist aspect to it, where it's like they can still be very sexy, but be very...
And they choose how they present it. They own their image.
Like the girls from Sex in the City. It's the same, like those characters are strong and sexy. Yeah. But what's wrong with that?
Well, even after that, like same era, Go-Go's. They were one of the first groups that were all women doing their thing, and they had control over that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit more about like how the movie came into production and like the trademark and licensing issues, because I know there's a lot of confusion and controversy about that, and the original creator, like Christie's not involved in the remake, and I'm just curious to learn more about that.
I know that Chrissy was on the set. She tweeted that they treated her like royalty when so she was on the set. I don't know if she actually appears in the movie. crossing my fingers she can talk a little bit about it later. I don't know. But
Okay. If anyone else here knows more about how the movie came to be, like why now all of a sudden, like the licensing and
Annie in
trade.
2010 actually said that she smelled something was fishy in the air regarding this.
Yeah.
In the panel, she actually said something is up. I can't put my finger on it, but she felt very strong that something was
happening.
soon.
Well, also
She said
people
that in
noticed.
2010.
Yeah, people noticed that Hasbro was trademarking the website addresses before anything happened. So they were trademarking gemandtheholograms.com.
Even before that, because they did a line called Unit E. I'm pretty sure the Gem fans will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the whole reason why that existed was Hasbro, they've been doing that with Transformers, with G.I. Joe. In order to trademark their licenses, sometimes they'll create a subline, and they'll do a subline, and they'll call a character Pizzazz. And it'll be a G.I. Joe toy. And no one will think much of it, but it's just to keep that registered with the U.S. Patent Office. How that works is you patent a name, and if you don't do anything with it in 3 years, you actually get fined. It prevents companies from just taking names and just, oh, we're going to hold all these names hostage. And so they did Unity, which was 2009, I want to say about, and they put Gem in there. And they put Mask and all their other vintage 80 toy lines that they're doing absolutely nothing with right now. And Gem was one of them with Synergy and everything. So it's already licensed. And it's been licensed by Hasbro for a while now. If you actually go to uscpatentoffice.com, type any Gem names and you can see right there and then if they have the license for them.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't Synergy actually like the main character displaying all the other characters?
The whole point of that Unit E doesn't matter. It was just this one-shot idea story. It's not something that's canon or anything. It's just to go, here's a way to patent this stuff, put a piece of material out for San Diego Comic-Con. That way we don't get fined, and that's it, essentially. So all of that stuff, I know that Synergy is licensed, Gem is licensed, Pizzazz is licensed, there's a few other, the names specifically. So, but I don't know all of them. But you can check on the US Patent Office.com.
And also, and shortly after that, that was when the Integrity, like a couple of years after that, that's when the Integrity dolls started.
Yes, well there you go, that's the whole point, was because they needed to have those names tied up, that way they could use them legally for the merchandising afterwards, otherwise you can't. Otherwise, like, I know in the case of Transformers, sometimes they lost the name Jazz, too much of a common name, or Ratchet, so they have to do Autobot Jazz, and sometimes that doesn't sit well with people. Same thing, Gem, kind of a common name, so you gotta make sure you either license it early, otherwise you're gonna have to do Singer Gem. It'll have to be the name of the character, well we saw in merchandising, forever. Or it'll have to be, Golden Glimmer Gem or whatever, so.
But weren't they originally going to call it M, but they couldn't trademark the name?
Oh yeah, M, yeah, that's a good point. The original name was M, and they couldn't trademark a letter, so that's why they created Gem.
Well, there you go.
But even for the Integrity dolls, like it was Jenna Burns and, Rory Wright Llewellyn, like they had to trademark the full name again. The Bible, basically.
All right, so I think we have Sean next and Erica.
Let's see. What I really liked was sort of the darkness and the reality and the sort of brutality, like starting with a funeral for a kid's show is kind of edgy. I mean, there's like all counterculture. There's like just people being. I mean, violence exists in real life. There's a lot of really real things they covered, which you wouldn't have covered today as much, I think, or in that same way. And then the technology and the inventorship and the hacking and all that kind of stuff I found really inspiring. So. Bit of a plug, but over in the vendor area, I have a very early version of an actual holographic camera, an actual holographic display. That's my field, that's what I'm working on, and I mean it's preliminary, I can show it to you. But next year I'll have broadcast quality holographic television ready. And it's here, like
Showtime synergy.
And that wouldn't exist as much if it wasn't for Gem. I mean that inspired me since the beginning, and I've been working on it for like 5 years, and bringing that whole thing to life is a real inspiration for it. So.
And that's true. Yeah, it's a cool machine. You gotta check it out. It's a display room right across. And that's a good point too. The things that kind of the show had things in it that did come to be like what I love is the episode where the master tapes are missing and they were programmed into Synergy, and it looks like a list of now you download on iTunes like Synergy's playlist. So it just seems like okay they were onto that before.
The first iPod.
Yeah, the first iPod. Synergy was the ultimate iPod. She did everything. Who needs Siri?
Well, I think you're retaining the loyalty that the holograms and Gem have, like in the film. Like I know there's going to be in Van Bickering, like Jericho and Arjun were in one of the episodes. but their structure that they're together, their sisters, they're bonded. That reminds me.
The sisterhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bonds, yeah, because that's it's that they say this a lot, but it's like I think they said it about Facts of Life, but that applies too. That's an 80s show, but you cared about the girls because they cared about each other, and that's something that rings true for Jem. So I think if you didn't have that in the show, you wouldn't be as invested as you are.
Well, I think that's important too to show as them being strong women. The whole feminist thing is that showing that they are these attractive women, they are these superstars. But they don't have to hate each other because of it. Because I think that happens a lot with women.
Yeah.
Even to this day, yeah.
There's that competitive, whereas if they did show misfits, it'd be the opposite, where it'd be that, that clashing of their...
The click clash.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Yeah. So I hope that aspect is there.
But yeah, especially now, oh, Taylor Swift hates Katy Perry. It's like, well, why are they pitted against each other just because they're women?
Going back to Debbie Gibson and Tiffany.
Yeah, Debbie Gibson and Tiffany. Yeah, Brady and Christina. Just Mariah. Well, that was kind of Mariah when he was Now Mariah and Ariana Grande. But
well, I really liked, I don't know if anyone here saw it, there was an interview, I forget what the publication was, that Sam did, talking about, where would Jem be today, and, how she would, the Misfits would all probably be in rehab, and Jem would probably be involved in, the anti-bullying movement and stuff like that, and I don't know, it was, Google it was a really interesting interview that she did.
Yeah, I think that actually sounds really appropriate. That would be.
Who was the first hologram that actually hit?
Timber.
Nah.
I put mine in chest.
She's stable.
And she would also have to be a rehab.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're talking. Now, we've talked about the movie, but does anyone feel the dolls? Does anyone have any issues preferring the new dolls or thinking that they don't compare to the originals?
Don't know much about them.
I don't want to speak so much to that as the fact that I compared when I was young. Even as a child, I recognized that I was getting a better physical body image out of Jem than I was out of Barbie, and the thighs might have been a little larger. I didn't care. I love Jem, and I just feel like, I know size has always been a point of contention, but I sort of respected the fact that they had, as much as they were fashion dolls, they had a closer idea of a realistic body figure. Yep. These integrity dolls are beautiful supermodels, but they are not portraying anything that a real woman is going to look like.
I think for me with the dolls, obviously vintage as a kid, that was, that's really what attracted me to these dolls was the cartoon and everything else, and of course, not being brave enough to say oh, I want, to have a Jem doll. So it was always the closet shopping at the store, that's, I'll buy that one. But what I appreciate about the Integrity line is that it's cartoon fashion focused, which even though it was that was Rio's outfit didn't look like that, Synergy didn't look like that, and so I sort of felt let down by the vintage line with those things, but really appreciate that Integrity has really gone the distance.
That was common with most 80s toy lines. Yeah. Transformers, G.I. Joe, none of them had animation accurate. Technology wasn't there back then.
Yeah.
Now we live in a day.
Some were accurate and some.
Now we live in a day of Hot Toys and all kinds of 12-inch doll lines. We call them doll lines, but they're action figures too, that are animation accurate, movies, Marvel movies, everything. Yeah. So for Jem to have that equivalency is totally doable today now.
Well, how did the Integrity dolls come about?
Yeah, the Integrity.
Not within a price plan.
For the fashions, yeah, it's always on about its clothes.
And then the tape. So that goes into the budget. And when you're competing against Mattel, you got to have something that's cheaper. So.
Yes, actually, I'm not sure how we just had a comment at the front about the Integrity dolls, how they came about. I'm not sure how they came about because I know it was really quick. They just kind of popped out of nowhere and showed up at San Diego Comic-Con in 2012. And that was shortly after the licensing started again, the trademarks.
It was probably planned way in advance because the second the Bay movies did well, the second they started doing the G.I. Joe movies, Hasbro took a step back and go, okay, Well, that's just it, and they're going, well, Monster High is really popular now, and you know, the girl, and now even with My Little Pony with their Equestria girls, dolls are really hot right now. Now, what brands do we have that we get to, oh, and there we go, you know, so it's, if all those other 80, look, that age group is now of age, late 20s, early 30s, some 40s, they got money, they got nostalgia, they want to pick it up now, they have disposable income, why not? Now is the time to bring back the franchise. You couldn't have done Gem in the 90s because they weren't old enough to have disposable income. Some of you guys were just finishing high school, if anything, you know, so it's all timing. All of that. As Aaron Archer, who's the head of the Boy Toys with Hasbro, said that anytime we ever brought something over, it was always that right time. If you were a fan of Beast Wars, of Transformers, which was late 90s, don't revive it now. Wait until it's 20 years old, and then you have that turnover of generation. Now they're old enough with disposable income. Now that's the hot thing. And it makes us feel old too, because we go, man. You know, a good example, Pokemon. Pokemon was something that was popular in the late 90s. Now these kids are in their mid-20s. Now it's nostalgic for them. Now Pokemon is hot again.
Pokemon hasn't disappeared.
Well, it hasn't disappeared, but it always becomes hot again because it constantly refreshes its market.
Power Rangers.
Oh yeah, Power Rangers is new every year. You know, especially in Japan.
I do know that it was quite a few years ago that Tonner tried to secure the rights to manufacture gem dolls, and I think that really started the ball rolling, and perhaps that's where Integrity kind of got involved and but you know, Robert Tonner tried to get the license from Hasbro, and they weren't really ready to share anything with them at that time. And so, you know, maybe that's when sort of Integrity, I mean, you know, Elaine and those guys are huge fans of that as well, so.
And you look also like He-Man, they have their classics line, Mattel, that's
right, yeah.
100% collector focused. No retail, only mail order, collector focus, and those He-Man fans are very dedicated and they focus only on that. So it's the same thing, but Gem has that potential to be retail. It has that potential to be mainstream because Hasbro really, outside of the My Little Pony thing, that took a weird left turn that they never expected. I mean, let's not get into it, but it's just, it took a positive monetary turn, even though if a social turn was kind of weird. They didn't expect the money to come from that area. The bronies. But the thing is that there's the reality with that is Gem has a huge potential to be a mainstream marketed. You can see Gem's dolls in stores again, and CDs and MP3. Who knows? There's so much you can market behind it. There's so many ways that you can tackle that from a tangible product brand that could be in Toys R Us again or Walmart. That it would be stupid for them not to do it now, especially now with the huge nostalgia movement. But now. Geek is chic, you know, now Geek is chic, Marvel movies, everything, it's so huge now more than ever. It'd be stupid to not hit the iron while it's hot, more than ever.
And especially with next year being the 30th anniversary.
Well, there you go.
Oh, yeah, 30th anniversary.
And if that was not planned in advance, I would be surprised. I'm pretty sure that was planned way in advance.
This year, yeah.
Just sort of to piggyback off of that is that, like, and my appreciation for the Integrity dolls, like, I didn't expect to like them as much as I do, and I still, you know, still wish they were cheaper, I wish they were retail, but I love them, like, they're gorgeous, and I play with mine, and I don't mind other people playing with mine, I actually let my nieces play with them. And the thing, though, is that they're asking the questions that I'm asking. They're asking, well, why does she only have one outfit? You know, where's the box art? You know, where's all these things? And I don't have any answer for her. And I'm just, all I can think of when she's playing it is like, I need 1,000 of you to say that. Because I'm buying you stuff. And I need someone to make a doll for me to buy for you. For me. And they will.
To actually do that, when it's convention exclusives, they actually design stuff with the potential of loss because it's that one moment to sell it. So if you make a unit and there's, let's say, 500 units of a toy, only 50% of them sell. They have to make sure that they develop it from a budget standpoint. And even if they sold 50%, they still made profit. So lack of box art, hiring an artist, paying for boxes. Other outfits, that's again, it's more budget. Tapes, more budget. You know, like all those things that would be more budget. When it becomes retail, and then Walmart's dumbing down the price and stuff, then you'll be able to have crazy box art, all that other
And
stuff.
I think
later on.
that's what I would look forward to, is to be able to turn down that pink aisle in any retail store and there would be a section of Jen's.
Oh, there will. Well, look at My Little Pony now
Yeah.
in Toys R Us and how much that dominates its own section. Or Monster High.
Monster High.
So that's what I'm saying. So, like I said, it would be ridiculous not to do Gem now. Because it's just, the market is so huge now for that, so.
That's the other aspect, is that I forget about is the art. Like, whether it's for the posters for the movies or for, for any packaging, they come for merchandising, it's in the industry. That was part of it.
That's true. That's a good point, because especially when you see, like, at last year's Gem Con, we had Sharon Nettle. And her art is so iconic, and now that's something that came up last year too. That it's like the new Integrity dolls don't have that on the box, so it's kind of missing that that experience of seeing like a giant, colorful picture just kind of draw you in. And even like, and as you're saying, in the stores too, like just like they are movie posters and things. So I guess that is. How important is that aspect as well? Like the art is making sure that the art's a part of Gem, because also even outside you see the books, the coloring books, the and the storybooks and the comic. Like they even had comics in some territories.
It will be important when it's part of marketing. When it's a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive and people already paid $300 to be there, a ticket and everything, it's not so important. But when it's the end cap of the Walmart aisle, they'll make sure the art is important. Just like any other marketing for any other toy line that has what's called promotional art, there'll be tons of that. And they might even bring back the old artists. They do that kind of stuff with every brand, whether it be G.I. Joe.
She'll get another house out of us.
I'm there. Don't worry, I'm there.
Her house is the house that Jen built because it's how she made the money.
There you go.
15 years ago, we couldn't buy a Gem t-shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
These didn't have Gem shirts.
Walk into Walmart, walk into the boys section.
Right.
Every shirt is 80s nostalgia. Right. It speaks for itself right there. If a $10 80 Ninja Turtle shirt, or I'm wearing an Atari one right here, I mean, it shows right away.
Yeah. But it was also, like we were making our own bootleg shirts back in the day because that's
all you can do.
We had no outlets to go.
Oh yeah.
I hope that we don't lose the people who care aspect, because I think that taught us all to do things like the charities every year and caring about the world and even about animals, the Land of the Rising Sun episode where they're saving the seals.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a really important part. She might have been kind of a bleeding heart, but that's what made her great.
But it was a good contrast, because you did have someone who cared that much.
Yeah.
That in contrast with Misfits pushing everyone off cliffs, like
Is there a Toronto seal charity or anything like that?
Yeah, we didn't with the cat rescue. Our charity is the Toronto Cat Rescue. So
no seals or orphan girls?
No seals, no Starlight Girls were harder than making this convention.
No runaway kids in Toronto.
Oh, but that there was a horse in Gem. There was a horse, like Lucky, Kimber's horse. That's right. But I think that's an important thing to come back to, is that Gem tackled so many things, and that was a point that came up earlier, that tackled things that might be too edgy for an animated show now. Like I don't think you'd have someone having a drug trip in an episode of an animated show today.
Yeah.
Laura Holloway, bless her heart. She was an engaging presence. But they did tackle a lot of things. They tackled, especially one episode that comes out, and then especially, and that came up actually, Samantha mentioned that in the commentary on the DVD, that there was such a response to the episode about runaways, and the fact that so many people have called that number at the episode, or mentioned stories about how Gem got them through a really tough time in their lives.
That's a product of. In 1982, Ronald Reagan started the PSA movement for modern television, which was he wanted not just Gem, but a lot of shows to have PSAs at the end of them. Even Transformers have never aired, but they do exist. G.I. Joe, knowing it's half the battle. So
Transformers didn't have one.
That was a product of time to focus on talking about drugs, because that was a big issue. Ronald Reagan started that. He pushed for that with
just
his
say
life.
no. Yeah.
To have that in cartoons, to have that in, you can go to arcades, winners don't use drugs, like you go to arcades back in the day, would say that before you would play the game. So it's not really an issue today, but maybe other issues. depression might be something that then comes up, or whatever modern issues today might then lead over to modern day Jem instead. Where drugs was the big problem back
in the 80s.
You know, drugs was the ultimate evil. It was just this catch-all phrase. What were those drugs? We don't know, but here's this thing I'm trying to sell to a kid in a commercial. We don't really say what it is. We're not going to say it's pot, but it's drugs, you know? So whatever those issues will be today will probably be what will be addressed in Jem. That's more PC.
Huh. Well, that's because just with the activism and some of the, especially liberal causes and Jem and progressive message was that, Hasbro was paying for the cartoon, but they weren't really policing what was in it as long as the product was in it. And same with the G.I. Joe as well. And I think now you have much more of the executives involved in what would, if there's a new cartoon, it may not have a lot of those progressives will kind of, because you have a lot of Christie and Roger and all of the writers were able to put a lot of themselves into the stories and not have the...
It still kind of exists, but it's really going to depend on who, if there, let's say there was a modern cartoon today, who is doing it, which company. If it's something like, say, Nickelodeon, there's a lot more creative freedom in that company, but then there's other companies that are a lot more closed-minded where we're trying to sell a product, we got to make sure, we got a Kimber doll that's going to be coming out, make sure she's in so-and-so mad about
Especially with the 80s, because I think with one of the things that was the criticism of Jem in the 80s and also J.J. Rollins is that they skewed older. A lot of us were 12, 13 and still watching Jem, and now the cartoons are much more skewing for a younger audience. And Hasbro is going to sell Jem toys to kids now. It's going to be really little kids. So while they may have some, obviously My Little Ponies has some adult humor in it, but I think the cartoons of our age have much more of a message that were, the writers were, 20-something, 30-somethings that were able to have a lot of freedom in what they could write. And now it's, this is for 4-year-olds. Laura Holloway can't be on a job trip, or kind of some of the messages.
I think you have to look at what other modern cartoons that exist currently that are aimed towards the same age group and demographic, like a Monster High show. If you like it or hate it, that might be more what Jem would be more in that same line. I wouldn't say so much writing, but tone.
That's the difference. The qualities of Legend of Korra right now. We're digital only because it's used to
that's Cartoon Network, which has that which has that more freedom though for writing. And they're not trying to sell a toy line. That's the thing too. Avatar's never been toy line first. Story second. It's always been the other way. If anything,
it's just the appreciation for what the writers were able to put into the cartoon. There were a lot of out of the past especially. I don't think you would ever nowadays get have a cartoon made for kids that's really talking about that from a parent.
They didn't talk down.
It could be. Batman could get away with it.
Yeah.
So should we start talking?
So I think there's a couple in the back and in front of the phone.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because some of you know that I got a chance to go to the set, and we're not allowed to talk about it. Samantha's not allowed to talk about it, but I just want to say that I met John Chu. He's a Jem fan. I think that he's going to try his best. Visually stunning, music was good, and that's all I know, honestly. So I think we should just be hopeful. And if the movie's terrible, at least people will be, like this guy said, at least people will be talking about it.
Even if it is. Big Bang Theory, but it made geek popular. You might hate the Ninja Turtle movie, but it made Ninja Turtles have a huge resurgence, although the cartoon helped it in recent one. A lot, actually. It's just, regardless, especially in Jem is a primary example. I don't want to insult you fans here, but it's something that's been really skimming obscurity for the very longest time with absolutely zero. No, but it's true. Okay, but the thing is, there's been zero really coming out for the public. Again, SDCC, multi-million-dollar convention that you could show up to. There's some new product there, but there really hasn't been much. So if there's any way to put it in the public eye, go for it, good or bad. Because at least it'll make people go, hey, remember Jem? Boom. Nostalgia. You just go, now tipster. You might hate that, but it's just, it'll bring all these opportunities on a monetary level to bring a new product. And trust me, you'll be happy then.
And it's a good point too, because as soon as the movie was announced, a lot of magazines started posting pictures of Jem saying Jem is back and we started talking about Jem.
There you go. Exactly. Where he wasn't talking about it last week, you know? So.
Yes. I was just going to say, I think what I really appreciate about the show, and I think part of why all of those vintage shows are coming back right now, is because the kids, maybe I'm biased because it was my childhood, but I think all of the kid shows that are on today now are just such crap. And the shows, I mean, you think about it, you have a 30-minute show, and after commercials, you've got 22 minutes of content. Jem really packed a ton of stuff into that 22 minutes, and you've got the shows now on like Nickelodeon and Disney, and like the main like climax of the episode is that one of the kids burped or something, you know? It's like, it's true. Like you watch those shows on Disney and Nickelodeon, and I think like that's what they're realizing now, like bringing back some of those shows is like there was actual context and characters, and you actually cared about what happened to them. So.
That's pretty true. It did seem ahead of its time in the sense that there was more meat to it, and they packed in 3 songs per episode. You had a lot of stuff going on.
A little bit of everything.
So, I mean, the other thing that attracted me to Jem was, I mean, everybody can look at, yes, there was a drug addict on the show and all these sorts of things, and people could take their own story and sort of integrate it away into Jem. They could relate. Like I was sharing with, you know, Samantha, the whole duality thing of Jem and Jerica, and you want to tell these loved ones that this is you and this is also you, was, you know, big in my coming out moment, was that, you know, it's like I am Jem, it's like I am gay, like, you know, that, and it made it okay. It was like Jem and Jerica are a good person. They're really not trying to deceive anybody. You know, it's just, these are the cards that they've been dealt, and they're afraid of what that reaction is going to be, and that's why that episode hits so close to home, because seeing Rio's reaction was my father's reaction, and I was like, I've got to separate myself from him a bit because I don't want that, you know, to be, and everything worked out great in the end, but, you know, still, it was an outlet. I didn't have any other, there were no gay characters on TV other than SNL, and they were campy versions, and that's you know, that wasn't what I wanted to portray. So great that kids are coming out at, you know, 14 and 15 now because of Glee and everything else. But, you know, back then, that was my moment. And as I said to, you know, Sam, like, just hearing your voice and just, you know, doing that was a big part for me. That even as I was, that's where I was as I was telling my parents was, I am gay, and it was Sam's voice in my ear that was getting me through it. So.
I want to say after
now
that,
I can just tell my wife. Oh, sorry, sweetheart, you didn't know?
Oh, that was such a, I almost would say that's all, folks. That closed the show. So like, I have nothing more.
And see.
But I think that's important. Maybe that's the last thing we should touch on. We have I think we have about 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. I was going to say, looking around, I don't want to, what do you call it? I don't want to generalize, but I do think that Jem has an important impact on the LGBT community, because a lot of people who responded to the show are a part of the community. And how important is that to see that kind of represented now that we can be more permissive? Because Glee came up as an example of something that you can see openly gay characters on, and we don't know this, but Erica Raymond might be a transgendered person. So is it important to see that represented in the movies, that there may be openly gay characters acknowledged or represented somehow in the plot?
I think that every character in the cartoon is actually you can relate to. Like, it reminds you of somebody you know. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, oh yeah, that you know, let's say Kimber, oh yeah, that's like this friend, or this person is like, so I think the way they wrote it and the way they made it really sort of did relate to real life in a lot of ways, and a lot of cartoons nowadays don't. And then with you sharing your story of coming out and hearing Samantha's voice, you know, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of impact on that cartoon on your life. Like I went into interior design and, you know, did the whole crazy club nightlife, you know, just because of the craziness that sort of was portrayed about music and the industry. So I went over there into that area, you know what I mean? So it was a show that really influenced, I think, a lot of people and the choices that they made and how they lived their life in a way without, you know, without really sort of like conscientiously knowing that that's where the ideas came to you from. I think it was subconscious, you know, and I think that's why the show was so great.
And that's a good point too, because so many people came away being inspired, like holograms, music, nightlife, and coming out.
Drag queens, fashion design.
Yeah, and apparently Kelly Osbourne in her new video, she channels Synergy. I don't know that. I've seen some things. I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard some things.
Well, and to add to that, to seeing yourself or people you know in the characters, but it also had like permission of choice. I mean, there were the Misfits, and they were happy to say that their songs were better. And you were like, yeah, that's, you know, and to be able to identify, you know, that this something that are not currently or ever socially acceptable. Don't push people off cliffs, but but there, you know, when you saw that tendency either in Friends or something like that, you're like, well, so it's so, you know, you would see that, and it wasn't saying do it. It was saying this is a real thing. Like, you know, people feel that way. It's a natural human emotion sometimes, and giving that permission of choice made sense to me as a child.
Yeah, I was just going to add what that's good said, because for me, the heart and soul of the whole thing is the characters. It's like the central, loving these characters, no one is really truly good or bad. If you look at it, it wasn't even, there were reasons why Pizzazz behaves the way she does.
Yeah.
She's not like, was like wounded by her family, you know, like emotionally. Very complicated characters that are so relatable. So we can even see ourselves in somebody that maybe was portrayed as a bad character because they had aspects of themselves that were
It's just aggressiveness. That's all.
There's all these things that happen, you know, Stormer makes choices when she's not with her friends, but she's showing that she can stand up for what she thinks is right. We see that a lot in a lot of the characters. You know, Roxy making mistakes and Roxy Rumble and realizing that, you know, she was wrong. It's just cool to see that there's such complex characters where a lot of cartoons we were watching and people are still watching, it's cut and dry. You know, this person's bad, this person's good, and there's not these shades of gray that are portrayed. And to me, I hope that comes out in movies that are coming, and I see it sort of in people's dolls, the way that they dress them, even in an integrity style, when we're seeing these dolls coming out. Like, for me, some of the best integrity dolls are the ones that kind of, because the styling is so edgy, like, the stickers and the Misfits are stronger for me, for my...
I agree.
Personally, because of the sweetness of Gem looks like comes through more for the 80s dolls, the sweet and smiling, you know, character. But, they made sweet faces on, you know, the Misfits in the 80s, and it's cool to see them in that edgy way. Anyway, I just think it's great to see the personalities coming through in the Jeff Brown videos that Jeff is
Oh, next year it's in Philadelphia. Cool.
So I think we have time for one more comment. One more comment or question? Oh,
how many people started watching Nashville just out of curiosity?
Oh, I
I never watched it, then I found out she's one of the main characters who's playing Jem in the movie. I'm like, what did she sing like? She's on Nashville?
So that's a great time. I think that's a good note to wrap up on, is the fact that we all hope that they maintain the nuance of characters and what Joyce has shown in the first place is the strength of their characters. So thank you everybody for a very spirited and outrageous discussion about Jem, Hollywood Jem 2014, where she was, where she is, where she will be.